Shalom Ashpaka. Today I want to go over more of flood details as well as different scriptures and texts that all have different timelines. Right now it's hard to narrow down which one is the correct timeline, but I'm primarily going to go over three texts: the Hebrew text, the Septuagint, and the Samaritan text. If you have not already seen my video about the Abisha scroll and heard of the Samaritan Pentateuch, which is the first 5 books in the Samaritan text, they keep the Paleo-Hebrew and adapted it. They were the only people that ever kept the Paleo-Hebrew language. And their Abisha scroll dates back 3,000 years ago, which is before the Dead Sea Scrolls. Let's go over some of these findings. This is going to be a long one. Sit tight. Chronological timelines. The Septuagint chronology is a timeline of early human history based on the Greek translation of the Old Testament. It differs significantly from the Masoretic text or the Hebrew text used in most modern Bibles, pushing major biblical events like the flood much further back in history. Key differences in timings. The Septuagint chronology provides approximately 1,300 to 1,500 additional years between creation and the life of Abraham compared to the Masoretic text. This is the event timeline. The Masoretic text pins creation down at 4004 BCE according to the Gregorian calendar, while Septuagint pushes it to around 5500 BCE to 5554. The flood happened in 2348 to 2518 BC, while in the Septuagint it is from 3100 to 42 to 3398 BC. And the time that Abraham was born was 1996 to 2166 BC, and the Septuagint is 2142 to 2307 BC. Why the chronology differs. The variation stems from the different begetting ages, the times these people were born, the age of the father when his son was born, according to the genealogies of Genesis chapter 5 and 11. Inflated ages. In the Septuagint, many patriarchs are listed as being 100 years older than when their father, their first son, than they are in the Masoretic text. They are a lot older. The ages are different. The times are different. There is an additional person that is added in the Septuagint that is not in the Hebrew text, and his name is Cainan. The Cainan mystery. The Septuagint includes additional generation between the flood and Abraham, a man named Canaan, who is absent from the Masoretic text but mentioned in the New Testament. Flood duration. The Septuagint shifts the flood calendar by 10 days, stating it began and ended on the 27th day of the month, whereas the Masoretic text uses the 17th day. Significance in 2026 scholarship. Many modern researchers prefer the Septuagint chronology because it aligns better with the secular archaeology findings. Historical fit. A flood date of 3200 BCE provides more time for the rise of complex civilizations like Egypt and Sumer, the Sumerians, which were already well established by 25 BC, a period when the Masoretic timeline would have the world just beginning to repopulate. External witnesses. Historians like Josephus, 1st century AD, and early Christian writers used texts that mirrored the long Septuagint timeline, leading some to argue it preserves the original numbers before they were later shortened in the Hebrew text tradition. Petrification typically takes hundreds of thousands to millions of years in most natural settings. However, the process is driven by the environmental conditions, specifically the availability of mineral-rich water and the exclusion of oxygen rather than time alone, allowing it to occur much faster under rare circumstances. Noah's Ark has been found by archaeologists on Mount Ararat. They have found the exact proportions of the boat, and they have found wood at the site. showing that there was a giant ark that landed there and was left to decay over time. Samples were taken from the dirt, from the wood that was available there, and they are showing chronologies of how old this ark was. Here's the natural time frames of this wood. Standard geological scale, most petrified wood found today originated 50 to 500 million years ago. Accelerated natural conditions, environments like mineral-rich hot springs or areas with heavy volcanic ash, petrification can occur in 5,000 to 10,000 years. Rapid observation. Some extreme natural cases have been documented where wood showed significant mineralization in just 7 to 36 years, such as fallen logs and high silica acidic waters of the Tateyama volcano in Japan. Artificial and laboratory speed scientists can now replicate petrification processes in highly controlled environments. Days to weeks, using extreme heat up to 1,400 Celsius and mineral baths. Researchers at the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory have petrified wood in as little as 4 to 5 days, months to years. Simpler laboratory experiments using sodium silicate solutions have achieved partial petrification in 1 year or less. Key requirements for fast petrification. Rapid burials. The wood must be completely covered by silt or volcanic ash to prevent rotting. Lack of oxygen. An anaerobic environment is essential to stopping the microorganisms from decomposing the wood before minerals can replace the organic tissue. Mineral concentrations. Groundwater must be saturated with minerals like silica, iron, or magnesium. High temperatures often found near volcanic activities significantly speed up the crystallization of these minerals. Scientific and geological data from 2024 to 2026 suggests two very different answers depending on whether the sample is actually wood or the rock it is embedded in. The geological age of the site. While proponents claim discoveries related to Noah's Ark, the mountain itself and the surrounding formations are much older. Mount Ararat, scientifically consensus places the age of the main volcanic peak at approximately 1.5 to 3.5 million years old. Lesser Ararat. This smaller cone is estimated to be about 150,000 years old. Darupanar formations. If the boat-shaped site is a natural geological feature, as many geologists argue, the rocks making it up are potentially millions of years old. However, recently, 2025 to 2026, soil and ceramic analysis at the site have found evidence of human activity in marine sediments dating back to 5,000 to 7,500 years. So, literally in the timeline that the flood is being said to have happened. The theoretical age of ark wood. Some researchers and creationist organizations argue that the traditional carbon dating, which typically gives results of 2,000 to 5,000 years for their sample, is inaccurate for pre-flood material. Adjusted carbon dating. They theorize that because the pre-flood carbon levels were lower, wood from the ark would actually date to between 20,000 and 50,000 years old in modern labs. Petrification paradox. While most petrified wood globally is 65 to 500 million years old, some petrified samples found near Ararat have been dated to the Triassic period, over 200 million years ago, which critics use to argue the wood found is actually much older naturally fossilized material unrelated to the human-built boat. The summary of possible ages, types of material, estimated ages, and scientific texts. Volcanic rock on Mount Ararat is 1.5 to 3.5 million years. They are claiming it is around 200 plus million years, often identified as natural fossils from ancient eras. Theoretical Arkwood, 20 to 50,000 years, predicted age based on specific carbon adjustment theories. The soil, there is pottery there, 5,000 to 7,500 years, evidence of human activity found at the site. In short, it's highly unlikely that any wood from a human-built structure like the Ark would be hundreds of thousands of years old, as this precedes the known existence of modern humans. If a sample truly dates that old, it is almost certainly natural petrification wood from an ancient geological era rather than a man-made vessel. So these are the findings with the Ark that is on Mount Ararat, that is considered to be the Noah's Ark. As of this time, Mashbaka, the theories are inconclusive. However, human activity around this time could lead to the possible truth that this is the Ark, as it states in Chronologies in the Septuagint. Now, Mashpaka, let's talk about the Samaritan Pentateuch and how it involves its chronology with Noah's Ark and the flood and pre-flood events. The Samaritan Pentateuch represents a unique chronology for the period between creation and Abraham that differs significantly from both the Hebrew Masoretic text and the Greek Septuagint. As of 2026, it remains a primary source for scholars debating the age of the earth and the timing of the Great Flood. From creation to the Great Flood, the Septuagint Pentateuch records a total of 1,307 years from the creation of Adam to the start of the flood. This is notably shorter than the Masoretic text and the Septuagint text. Death in the flood. A distinguishing feature of the Samaritan Pentateuch is that the lifespan for Jared, Methuselah, and Lamech are adjusted so that all three patriarchs die in the exact year of the flood. This idea is kind of hard to believe, that people would live this long and then all of a sudden would die right before the flood. However, Mashpaka, take this information and hold it to the side for now. Let's keep reading. Reduced begetting ages. The Samaritan Pentateuch provides shorter begetting ages, the age of the father when his son was born, for Jared, Methuselah, and Lamech, compared to other versions, which accounts for the accelerated timeline to the flood. From the flood to Abraham, in contrast to its short pre-flood timeline, the Samaritan Pentateuch provides a significantly longer post-flood period than the Masoretic text. The Samaritan Pentateuch records roughly 940 to 1,000 plus years from the flood to the birth of Abraham. That's a lot of extra time that is allowed to happen before Abraham is told to get thee out of thy country and go into the land of Canaan. On this time, a lot of things can happen in 1,000 years while all this is going on. Alignment with the Septuagint. For the post-flood generations, Shem to Terah, the Samaritan Pentateuch often adds 100 years to the begetting age of each patriarch compared to the Masoretic text. For example, where the Masoretic text might say a son was born when the father was 35, the Samaritan Pentateuch and the Septuagint often say 135. Terah's lifespan adjustment. The Samaritan Pentateuch uniquely records Terah, Abraham's father, died at 145 years old, whereas the Masoretic text and the Septuagint record 205 years. Scholars believe this was a deliberate alteration by the Samaritan scribes to ensure Abraham left for Canaan, and after his father's death, resolving a perceived chronological conflict in the narrative. So, Mashbaka, the Samaritan text is the oldest Hebrew text and maintains the oldest known Hebrew language that we have today, being the Paleo-Hebrew, and it has adapted to a modern form of it today with modern words. The Samaritan Pentateuch has thousands of unique differentiations from the Masoretes texts, being the Aleppo Codex and the Leningrad Codex. The Samaritans believe that their law, their first 5 books, are the truth, and their writings coincide with the Dead Sea Scrolls on several verses, which differ from the modern Masoretic text, the Hebrew text that we have today that everyone's reading from. So, Mashpaka, let's move on. The summary of the comparative timelines: creation to flood, flood to Abraham, and total time. In the Samaritan text, Creation to flood was 1,307 years. Flood to Abraham was 942 to 1,042. And total time from creation to Abraham was 2,249 to 2,349 years. In the Masoretic text, creation to flood is 1,656. Flood to Abraham was only 292 years. And the total time from creation to Abraham was only 2,008 years. That is what we have for our Hebrew text that we're reading from. In the Septuagint, the longest, and the Septuagint is 1,000 years older, over 1,000 years older than the Masoretic text that we have today, and was well kept by the Greeks that were superseding other people at that time, ruling over them, maintained by them. In their text, creation to flood is 2,242 years. Flood to Abraham is 1,072 plus years. And total time from creation to Abraham is 3,394 plus years. Historical notes. While the oldest physical Samaritan manuscript dates to around AD 1200, they represent an independent tradition believed to reach back to before 100 BC. Many scholars view the Samaritan Pentateuch-specific chronology changes as international harmonization to make the biblical narrative appear more logically consistent. Even though the Samaritan Pentateuch, the physical copy, only dates to 1,200 years old, the oldest parts of it, they have writings in the script that are dated way older than that. And in fact, this is a copy of the original scroll that was written by Abisha. The Samaritan people are poor, Mashpaka, and they were selling scrolls and texts to continue their livelihoods throughout the years. And through charitable donations and things that have happened through the years, they received money and they went back to purchase what they sold to other people, selling their scrolls. They went back and bought them back and reclaimed them. It kind of sounds like they pawned off these scrolls and their verses and texts to get money to continue to live, to survive. They were a small community, Mashpaka, and they did their best to preserve their texts. As of right now, Mashpaka, the information that is set in stone of which is the true timeline, science typically proves Septuagint timelines. The Samaritan timeline is more correct than the Masoretic timeline. I will be continuing this topic of comparing timelines. This is going to be part 1. Let's clear up and find the truth of these chronologies and these timelines, Mashpaka, so that we can have a established calendar timeline of events. If you would like to join the talk on the Apocryphal New Testament and Old Testament, as well as the other topics that I'm mentioning in my videos, feel free to join me in my chat. I have a group page on Facebook, which is the only way that anyone can ever talk to me. I do not have comments allowed for reasons, mainly because of people that would disturb the peace, that would be naysayers, that would confuse others that are listening. For a long while, I did not have a way to contact me at all, and I contacted everyone through their ways of accessing them. But now I have a page. So if anybody would like to join and talk about scriptures, mainly about scriptures only, feel free to join me on my page on Facebook. That is all, Mashpaka. I have it.